Hello and welcome to our second video regarding unit testing and migrated code. In this video today we're going to review practical patterns to testing migrated code and to show you how you can test migrated code and use those tests to make the changes that you will make in the future safer and better. In the previous video we reviewed the basics of unit testing when we created the CSV writer, and now we'll try to take this into a more real-life scenario that you may have in your existing code. So we'll start by reviewing what we want to test. In our application, the Northwind application, there's the customer screen and it has a button called Order CSV. This button would create a CSV file and place it in this path. temp output, and we can see that the file was created. And that file contains the export of the different orders that were done by that specific customers, including the value, the total value of that order. And this is basically what we want to test. We want to make sure that the CSV file is created and that the values in it are correct, or specifically the calculated values are calculated correctly. So with unit testing, the biggest problem is setup. So the first test takes a long time to create because we need to figure out the setup and configurations of everything. The second, third, and fourth tests are a lot easier. So we'll start with the first one and take it from there. Okay, so our code has a program called order CSV. That's the program that we want to create, and that program takes as a parameter a customer ID. When we ran it last, we used a customer called ALFKI. I'm going to save it for a second somewhere else so I can then use it. So let's add a new unit test class. Basic unit test. Let's hope that that's the template that we like, because previously the template that we used here wasn't the one we liked. And we'll call it test orders CSV. Okay, cool. Basic template, basic test. If we'll build it now and we look at the test explorer, we'll see that we have the test over here, and that it has failed. It's not yet run, and we will run it. It will obviously succeed because it doesn't do anything. Cool. Next thing we want to do, we want to call the program and send it a parameter and see that it runs. So we'll say new Northwind dot order CSV, which we cannot see right now. Why can't we see it? The order CSV is not a public class, and since the unit test project is a different project than the Northwind project, it cannot see private classes of it. So there's a way to expose all private classes to the unit test project, which we can do, but we will not do in this case. In this case, we just change this to be public. So after turning it to public, we can now say new Northwind order CSV dot run and send it the customer information that we want. Cool. Let's run it now and see what happens. We get an error saying that it couldn't find the connection named Northwind. Okay, no connection were loaded. Are you missing the ini file? Which kind of makes sense because this test runs on its own. It doesn't have any setup code prior to it. When we run this program from our application, the program starts by running the programs class, and in it the program main method that takes care of all of those interesting things that we care about, including global default, which is important, version 10 that is important, and init user settings Northwind, which is obviously what we're missing over here. So let's create our own little setup method. Okay, and we'll call it from the test method. Okay, and to that setup method, we're going to enjoy the fact that we have the ability to show things side by side. We can take the things from here that we care about. We'll take the version 10 compatible. We'll take the global default because it can affect the way the application behaves. Keyboard mapping we don't care about. And the user settings that we do care about. Okay. You can see that the date is highlighted as something that it doesn't identify. So we can say, please, using Firefly box. Cool. And we can see here that the args are missing because the args come in as a parameter. We can just say new string array fs0 because We don't need any command line parameters. Now when we do it like this, we'll need to have the Northwind INI also exist in the test project. If we don't want it to be there, we can point it to any path we like. In this case, we can say C Firefly migration Northwind app.net Northwind INI. Okay, and can I have a copy path or something? No, so I'll take the start run, drag it to it. So now it shows me the complete name, and I can put it in my code. You can of course configure it to be a relative path or anything else that you like. This is just me being lazy. Cool. So we put it here, and we'll go ahead and run our code and see what happens next. Okay, we get the message box that indicates that the report was running, and we can go over to the output folder and see that the file was actually created. Well, let's just run it again. Let's delete it, run it again, and we can see that the file or the message box came to life and the file was created. The only problem with that is, imagine that I may have like 15,000 automatic tests, and then I'll get like 15,000 message boxes in between or stuff that will prevent us from using. Generally speaking, we don't want any user interface to run when we are running the test, so we don't want any message box or dialogues or anything else that comes in. So to prepare for that, there's code to suppress all of those message boxes and all of those notifications that come up, and it is called env common and suppress dialogues. Okay, when we'll do that, okay, we can see that the test have run. Okay, we can see it here. It was running successfully, but we didn't get any message box, and the file was created. Let's just do it again. We'll run the test. The test has run, and the file was created. So we know now that this line of code takes care of suppressing all the dialogues and making it easier for test projects or even web projects to run without getting stuck on anything that is not that important. Cool. So first thing we've done, the test runs, the file was created, we're happy about it, but we haven't done let's do two more things actually. The code that we wrote here in the setup is general to the entire test project. We're going to want to run it again and again and again and again, because for every test that we create, realistically, we're going to need it. Now, if it was normal code, we would put it in the program main, where the program starts and runs for the first time. The equivalent for that in a test project is something called assembly initialize. Okay? It's an attribute that we set to a method. That method has to be static, and it has to have a parameter of type, I don't really remember, let's see, test context. That's the documentation of Visual Studio. You'll see that they notify that. Now, by doing that, this code will run before all of my tests. Okay, so this is kind of the startup code that will run before all the tests will ever run. It will set the INI, the general settings, and everything else that we need. So let's build this, and let's run the test again. And the test has run successfully. Okay, you can see that even though I wasn't calling the setup method, the setup code was run using this code design. Okay, code pattern construct. Okay, great. So we've got our test running. We know that it runs and it didn't crash, which is nice to know. But let's go ahead and assert or verify the data that we get as a result of it. Okay, I like using the namespace using Firefly box testing, which adds all the should be methods that we like that we've seen in the previous test patterns that we were running on. So let's first make sure that the result file exists. Okay, we know from our code that the order CSV file should be output and the customer ID.csv. We have the logical name output, orders, and CSV. So let's make sure that the same thing happened. Let's go to our code and say var file name and paste this over here. And we know that the customer ID in this case is this nice little ALF Cry I. Okay, so we don't need all of those classes and all of those everything. Now we know that this is a logical name that we want to decode. We want to translate it, so we'll say using env, and we'll say path decoder dot decode path, which will get the strings. This will translate this path into a full path. Let's have a look. Let's put a breakpoint over here and debug. And we can see that the file name contains the full path. Okay? Just like the translate function from the user method class. Good. Next, let's say that if, okay, let's add also system IO to start talking with files, system IO, and say that if a file exists file name, then file delete. Before we start the test, we set the test up. We set up the scenery for our test, so we will make sure that the file doesn't exist in that directory. We'll run the test, and then we'll say file exists, file name should be true. Okay? That way we can verify that the file was created. So we've run our test, and we can see that the test succeeded. Now let's just break it up to see that it fails when we're doing something wrong. And we see that it failed. Okay, so we know that our test is correct. And we can also add extra information for the failure. You see currently it says an exception was thrown, expected true, but it got false. We can see the same message over here. Test failed, blah, 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 blah. We can add a description here saying the result file name was not found, to get our test to be more readable. Now, this is nice. I use it, but I'll be honest with you, I use it less than it sounds. In 5% of my tests, I use the description. In most cases, I just go to the code and see what's going on. So don't work too hard on it. But you can see here that the message might be nicer and make our life easier. Cool. So we made sure that the file was created, and that's kind of cool. Let's make sure of a few other things that we want to make sure. And we'll have a look at the file. We'll open it with Notepad. So we want to make sure that in the data that we have in front of us, we have 6 rows in it. Okay, and so let's do that. Let's say using var sr equals new stream reader. Stream reader is the most basic way of reading a file. I'll use the file name. Okay, now say string line, and I say while line equals sr read line is different than now. Okay, so now line will have the specific line whenever I use it. I'll just put this supported because first of all making sure that it exists. Okay, and we can put a breakpoint here and debug. And we can see, didn't fix the file name. And we can see, to run the debugging of the test. Okay, and we can see that the line has the actual value in the row. Okay, and when we start we'll swing through the breakpoints, we can see that the value changes. Okay, cool. So the test is run, and we are happy with it, I think. Yes, this was successful, took a total of 12 seconds. So we want to first of all make sure that we have 6 lines. So let's go ahead and do an int I++, and then say I should be 6. Okay, the test runs and it was successful. And again, just to make sure that we're not missing anything, what to do should be 7, see that it breaks, and return it. Cool. Okay, so the first thing we did, we made sure that the number of rows that we plan to have in it are already existing in it. Great. Next thing we want to do is verify the actual data in those lines. Okay, so we want to make sure that the first value is 1085, the second value is 878, 330, 850, 491, whatever, all of these guys. So I will go ahead and read this file and saying, okay, var s equals to line.split, comma. Okay, when I debug this, we can see that if the line contains the entire string, split returns an array that I can then go and talk to. Okay, position 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, so then I can write here S4 should be, and just copy this string over there. Okay, now I have multiple rows. Okay, so I need to take care of that in all of those rows. So let's do a very simple one. If I is 0, let's just make sure we get the first row. Okay? We'll run the test.
S4 is the last one, isn't it?
It's the last cell in the line. Okay. The line has like 5 cells, 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, and S4 has this value. And again, let's change this from 85 to 84 just to see what happens. Okay, we can see that the test has failed, and we can see that it was expecting 84 but got 85, and if it was a fixed width font, this indicator would indicate the correct position. Okay, so we'll return this to be 85, and we're happy with it. Okay, now just to complete this test, let's say else if I is 1, then S4 should be this. Now this kind of gets annoying quite quickly. Okay, if I equal 0, 1, ta 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 ta. What I would actually do is I would create an array called expected values, and I will create an array that will hold those strings. So I'm expecting this in the first one, this in the second one, and so on. Now I can say expected, I can say that S4 should be expected values with position I. If I've done everything right, the test will run. That's cool. Let's run all the tests. Cool. So here we are, we've created the first test, the tests migrated code, the test migrated report, and verifies that the actual data that we expect to come out actually comes out. And this is the start of the process, it's not even the middle or the ideal part of it. I think the first thing to highlight here is that this test suffers from being extremely dependent on the existing data in the database. If I'll go and run the application and change any of the information of any of the orders of this customer, or just add an order or change an order, this test will break. And that's the next thing we're going to do in the next video. So thank you so much for tuning into this one, and we'll try to do the next one very soon. Bye bye.